Developmental psychology is lifespan development. From the minute you're born to the minute you die, and all the stuff, all the experiences, all the thoughts, feelings, and emotions and challenges that exist in between. It could be based on the social relationships that we develop. It could be based on the cognitive experiences that sometimes define us, or the moral challenges that oftentimes will plague the human experience. Erikson focused on social development across the lifespan. Unlike Sigmund Freud, who theorized only 5 stages, Erikson theorized 8, with the possibility of there being some additional ones in between, or maybe some other ones towards the end that he did not identify. Each one of them, though, does have a challenge. And if you note with the items that are on the screen, he was a neo-Freudian. So he did take the basic ideas of Freud, but go with it in a different direction. At the heart of his research is the unconscious. The unconscious as defined by our experiences with those around us. Each one of these stages, and he theorized 8, are all marked with some sort of conflict. The first of these stages is trust versus mistrust. Note the years from birth to about a year and a half. It is called this, it is identified this, because the caregiver is the one that's providing what this stage entails. Are they providing a safe and secure environment? And if not, the environment, is it one of anxiety and insecurity? Some questions that might be connected with this stage. Can a child trust the world to fulfill its needs? The trust or the mistrust that they develop can carry on with the child for the rest of their lives. And again, operating from the unconscious, there could be trauma that occurs in this stage that could plague and haunt and shadow this kid as the child ages in his young adult years and even later on than that. Trust versus mistrust is the first of the 8 stages of man. The second of the 8 stages of man, Erikson identified as autonomy versus shame and doubt. The years for this second stage are about 1.5 to 3. Kids at this stage, as autonomy implies, are wanting to do things on their own. I'm a big kid, I'm a big girl, I can do it myself. These would be some statements, some declarations made by kids at this stage who want to kind of do things on their own, that want to show that they can achieve, that they can accomplish. And are those things being encouraged, or are they being stifled? Also during this stage, one of the big words in their vocabulary is a simple 2-letter word, no. And if you consider for just a moment, that is one of the ultimate expressions of one's autonomy, trying to exert themselves over the situation or the person. Toddlers begin to control their bodies with toilet training. Temper tantrums are a big thing, and make sense because they want to do things themselves. They get upset when things don't go their way. The third of the 8 stages of man, as identified by Erikson, would be initiative versus guilt. The years for this would be 3 to 6. The challenge, kind of an expansion of the previous stage, independence, a degree of independence versus a lack of self-worth. It's worth noting at this stage, at least towards the end of this, kids are starting to enter into preschool, maybe daycare. But one of the words that tends to plague kids, or moreover the caregivers at this stage, no becomes why. Why is the sky blue? Why do good things happen to bad people? Why do I ask so many questions? Kids at this stage are very inquisitive. They want to know. There is almost a natural thirst and desire to learn at this stage. Is it being encouraged or is it being stifled? And again, kids at this stage are very eager to show individuals what they know. As any teacher, maybe pre-K or daycare might attest to, if you were to ask the kids a simple question in a group setting, almost every single hand would go up, even if their answers have absolutely nothing to do with the original question that was asked. Kids want to express themselves at this stage. And it's only through the reactions around their peers that will either be encouraged, rewarded, incentivized, thereby you would see more, or discouraged, laughed at, or penalized. Consequently, you may see less of that. The fourth of the 8 stages of man, as identified by Erikson, is competence versus inferiority. Now, on the previous stage, I had mentioned that perhaps the kid is entering into daycare or perhaps preschool. It is within this stage that the kid is in school, 6 through the early teen years, and the challenge at this stage, one is being compared against their peers. Now, what does this mean? Children, when they're at home, they are the center of attention. They are the apple of their parents' eye. No matter what they say or what they do, in most homes, in loving homes presumably, their actions will be encouraged. They will regularly be told maybe how smart they are, how handsome or how pretty they are. And while that may be true, when they head off to school, there's always going to be somebody a little more intelligent than you. There will always be somebody a little bit better looking. And how will the kid react to that? There will always be a kid a little bit stronger than you, a little bit more sly than you. How will the kid handle that? Think back yourself when you were within this time frame. Maybe in the elementary school classroom, you quickly caught on to the concept and were able to go around the class and help other students who didn't grasp the concept nearly as fast. Okay, now you probably felt pretty good about that, but what about the kids that you were helping? Okay, those experiences, those psychological scars can cut deep. This is the fourth of the 8 stages of man. The fifth of the 8 stages of man. There are plenty of examples to go along with this in any middle school or high school setting. The years for identity versus role confusion are the teen years. The challenge, the basic challenge in this stage, in the 5th of the 8 stages, as identified by Erikson, who am I? Now, obviously, in this stage, they know who they are, they know their name, but that is not what the crisis is potentially in this stage. Am I my own person? Am I doing and living the life that I want to live? Or am I following in my parents' footsteps? And perhaps the best example of this, especially come senior year when the senior accolades and awards are being handed out, the one who gets the most changed award. Maybe at some point, maybe in late middle school, early high school, they went through a weird, awkward phase. Maybe they grew their hair out, maybe they spiked their hair, maybe they shaved their head. But it was very, very obvious, at least outwardly, that they were going through a stage. Maybe in elementary through middle school, they were one of the most studious individuals in the classroom. But at some point, they decided, you know what, that's not me, that's not who I am. It's probably for the best that somebody identifies and nips this in the bud when they can, because if left unchecked, this could very easily become a full-blown midlife crisis when one is older. But this would be the 5th of the 8 stages of man as identified by Erikson. The 6th of the 8 stages of man as identified by social psychologist and neo-Freudian Erikson would be intimacy versus isolation. Now, it is at this point that critics of Erikson point out maybe a need to revise Erikson a little bit, that some of his ideas are slightly dated. At the time that Erikson was writing and theorizing these concepts, people tended to settle down in the age bracket that's identified on the screen. Most people in their early 20s, and for that matter back in the 1950s, maybe even earlier than that, decided to settle down. It was just expected that one got married, they then settled down, had a house, family, the whole 9 yards. And of course the challenge in this stage, settling down, family, marriage, career versus loneliness. While Erikson and this stage and the ones that follow are in need of revision, it is worth noting that probably by this stage, if somebody has not had a meaningful relationship, then that is probably a cause for concern. Most, even though nowadays they are putting off marriage later and later, at least in this time bracket, most have settled into some type of career. Most have moved out of their parents' basements. The next, the 7 of the 8 stages of man. And again, this one would need to be revised a bit to kind of fit with the times. But generativity versus stagnation. In this stage, there's a very good chance that most of your teachers, according to Erikson, would be in this stage. Myself, as I will be 41 in about 2 months, would be right in the middle of this stage. And for that matter, most of your parents would also be in this stage. And again, according to Erikson, every single one of these stages has some sort of a challenge. And one could even make an argument it is at this stage that things kind of come full circle. If you remember that very first stage, trust versus mistrust, it is at this stage, and if you notice the challenge, care and concern for the family and society versus the midlife crisis. So it is at this stage, more than likely, if you have married and settled down, that you also have children. And are you meeting your children's needs? Are you helping them out? Are you being a good parent and caregiver? Care and concern for the family and society. It's not that uncommon for people in this age bracket to lend their time and services to different volunteer efforts to maybe help coach Little League. Okay, now that's a positive, and very much so during this stage. Most individuals should be fairly settled in a career. Okay, but what if they are not? What if they're looking back and they don't like who they are or what they've become? What if they can identify with one of these 7 dwarves of midlife? That's where the midlife crisis, the fabled midlife crisis that's often satirized in TV shows and in movies, might set in. Questions that might get asked in this stage: is everything going as planned? Am I happy with what I have created? Think of this stage as kind of like a middle of your life evaluation. Okay, consider, most of you that might be listening to this, maybe you're a sophomore, you're a junior, or you're just a few weeks away from graduation. I would imagine that most listening to this probably have some sort of idea or concept about what they want to do with their life. Think 20, 30 years down the road. Maybe you've accomplished those things. Maybe you've accomplished none of those things. But are you happy with your life at this point? And apply this to your own life with your family members around you. Some of your family members that fit in this age bracket are, or at least outwardly, do they appear to be happy with who they are and what they're doing? And then the final stage, according to Erikson, social psychologist, neo-Freudian, is the ego, integrity versus despair. And this would be where things have gone completely full circle, as according to Erikson, This is at the very end of your life. The challenge in this stage, simply put, asking yourself, was my life worth it? This is you now in advanced years, 40, 50, 60, 70 years from this point. At this point, maybe you've settled down, maybe you have put your time into your career and you've retired. Maybe the grandkids come to visit, maybe they don't. Are you happy with the life that you've led? Are you content? Are you satisfied? Or are you filled with regret? For at the end of the day, that is the challenge in this final stage. And to that end, think about some of your family members, your grandparents. How regretful do they sound when they talk about older events, past experiences? Okay, is there a tone of regret and remorse in most of the things that they say? Or one of those que sera, sera type of attitudes? Okay, because this would be you taking an end of your life evaluation of all the good, the bad, the ugly that's happened. Looking back on life, was my life meaningful or do I have regrets? And then, of course, death must come to us all.